Hello everybody. I figured today I should do a little video on my wheel horse collection. So I can talk about each one a little bit and tell you a little more about them. This here is a 1056 and it looks to be there are a few things on it that aren't quite stock. The muffler seems to be off like maybe a 300 series or something, and it's got a 6-speed transmission in it. This is a pretty nice little plow tractor. I'm thinking it might turn into my my one bottom plow dedicated plow mule. With that, I'll be working on more weight, more traction, more weight, and maybe some more traction. It's got a really comfy seat. It's not perfect, but I know that when you're plowing all day, that helps. If that's the case, I'll have to add probably a hydraulic lift somehow. So we'll see how that goes. I don't know. Otherwise, I call this one Stormy. Every one of our tractors seems to have a name. Some make sense, some don't. But this one here is a 656. We call this one the Polished Turd. And I learned how to wet sand and buff. And if I actually give this thing a bath, it's nice and smooth and shines up real well. It's got a Tecumseh engine in it. And I know there's a lot of people that don't like the way a Techie runs. This one does pretty good. I one of these days need to work on the lift. The lift won't stay up, and that could be just an adjustment. Maybe I should just take the deck off. I don't really mow with it. It was just to see if I could mow my field. This one is a custom. It is Frank, and Frank is a mashup between a Charger 12, a C101, a 753, and some other random parts. This is my wife's tractor. It's got a 10-horse Kohler, Sunstrand transmission, got some David Bradley wheels and tires, and the David Bradley hubs. It's pretty loud with that 3-inch stack, and it's pretty much just a show tractor. The hydraulic lift works great. As you can see there, I call it a 1073, just based on Wheel Horse's model numbers. This is Hot Wheels. One of my friends named Richard built this quite a while back. It's a 953 with a Magnum 12 Kohler in it. It's got a Harley Davidson exhaust stack, and I believe when he bought the tractor as a project, there was already a hole in the hood here, so he just utilized that and those grab rails from a shower on the fender. When we put these away for the winter, everything was muddy, so everything needs a bath, a little shining and some polish. This one up here, this is a C160 with a little bit older hood I put on it. We call this one Chief. It's the biggest engined wheel horse that we have, and it's a project. It does run, but I have not driven it really, to say so. That exhaust is pretty fun. It shoots flames out, and it's everything but quiet. This over here is Big Junkie. I don't quite remember. Seems like it's a 1276 maybe, but it's got a 10-horse Kohler in it. And as the name states, it's pretty junky. It's beat up, mismatched wheels and tires. Lights don't work. It's ugly. It has like a Cub Cadet seat base on it. I was was going to fix it up, but it's got so much character being ugly and whatnot that it's just a fun tractor. You do see there's a really big exhaust muffler from a Circle Track car. I don't really know whose it was, but it showed up here one day. So someday it's going to have an obnoxious stack on it. Down here is Putt Putt. This is my 502, and it needs a bath in a bad way. This is my first wheel horse I ever had, and I did restore it, but you couldn't tell if you looked at it. It's got an 8-horse Kohler, an 8-speed transmission out of a 78 C101. It's got the C101 rear wheels. They're a little bit wider than the 502 wheels. It's got a 604 chassis and steering setup, and it actually needs a little bit of work. If you look at the steering spindles, you can see they're tilted back really far, and that is because the 5/16 bolt that holds the axle pin in place keeps backing out on me. So I'm gonna have to tear that apart one of these days and give it a good bath and see if I've got to just get a better lock washer or a star lock washer, or maybe the threads are even stripped out a little bit on the frame. I might have to weld it up and rethread that. But Putt Putt's my baby. Like I say, you couldn't tell. It was so filthy. Last time I drove that was at Jim and Cindy's plow day, and then I came home and did some more plowing. But all this filth is just from a little bit of drizzle and going down a dirt road when it was on the trailer. This here is my daughter Riley's Screamin' Jimmy, we call it. It's got the 8-horse Kohler, Commando 800. It's got a custom airbrushed hood off a I don't know what. We picked that up at the big show last year, and she just thought that Screamin' Jimmy needs a loud, obnoxious hood just to match his character. When we first got it, the governor was just extremely off, and it would kind of run away like an old Detroit diesel would. So, Screamin' Jimmy. I don't remember what these axles are, but obviously they're much wider than normal. It's just a 1-inch axle rear end, but it's pretty crazy how wide it sits. When I bought it from Robbie, the wheels were inside out, so you would never be able to tell how wide it actually is. This is my other daughter's 857, Jada, and we call that Barney Fife. It was considered a barn find. I bought it from a guy at the big show in 2018, and just it's actually really quiet, which does not match Barney Fife's demeanor, but it's a nice running tractor. It's still got the for sale ink on it, but it ain't for sale, of course. It's got a big old muffler on it. I think my buddy Dell's bought I think his is an 857 as well, with a big muffler like that. But it's quiet with that starter generator. It starts real quiet and runs quiet as well. Up here, there's two RJ58 front ends in here. I think the transmissions are in another tote. The hoods and everything are in there as well. Those are two projects we bought at the 2019 Big Show in Biglerville or Arendsville, PA. And those eventually will be two projects that I want to do side by side with my daughters, and they can learn how to restore tractors. Really no rush on those, obviously, but I figured someday we'll get to them. Up here, it's hard to see. It's a project. That's the leftovers of the 753 that I bought basically just for the body. I kind of thought maybe it'd be fun to try making a 1045 out of it. Those rear fenders are off of a Sears Suburban, and they're just a big round fender. So I thought it'd be fun to throw a square hood on it and get that going. Up here is a 552. I got that with a Tecumseh snowblower engine sitting in it, but it's never run, and I think the rear end's locked up, so I'll have to go through that. But I'd like to do a build sort of like putt-putt, just a kind of a refresh, frame off with that, and that one we call Poppy. Even though it's never run, the pictures in the Craigslist ad had like a big tall 1-inch pipe exhaust stack, and I can only imagine how loud that would be. Up here's a C81, and out of love for my buddy Stevosaurus on the Red Square forum, and the fact that he thinks that every tractor's name should be C81 or 552, I call that one Steve. It runs really well, and it's got an 8-speed transmission, but it definitely needs a ring. It smokes like a chimney, and so it'll get a ring job one of these days, and it'll be just a chore tractor. This one is Riley's tractor, and it's hard to see these things up on the top rack. I'm sorry. Maybe one of these days I'll get them down and do a side-by-side explanation. But this, I believe, is a 1276 Riley bought for $65 at an estate sale. And we got it March of last year, and for her birthday in October, I told her I'm not going to work on it, but I'll teach you how. And so during her birthday, we spent a day and got it running, and she drove it around the next day. And so that's Philly. And Philly comes from being a 76 model, and you think of America and Philadelphia as like the 76ers. So a filly is also a young female horse, and being that my daughter is a young female, we figured that would be fitting. A little bit long of an explanation, but that's all right. We got various parts from the big show and just other random stuff. There's the rest of the RJ58s, and we got totes full of boxes and parts and whatnot, transmissions all over the place. Oh yeah, one more, and I think that'll be it for now. This one is Jane, and Jane is just plain Jane. It's a Commando 6. It's also a Tecumseh 6-horse. So I only have 2 Tecumseh powered wheel horses. Everything else for now is Kohler. But this has a Kohler carburetor on it, and it runs very well. I still need to put an air cleaner on it, but it runs better than any other Tecumseh I know, I think, with that Kohler carb. Super easy to tune. But yeah, this is an older restoration I picked up off Craigslist because it wasn't running, and it ended up being that it just needed a carburetor. The carb had been taken apart and kind of put back together with no guts in it. So it was quite obvious that somebody had played with it, but I think I gave $80 for it just the way it sits. Add that carburetor, and it's a good chore tractor too. It does a mean wheelie, and I broke the lift cable one time bouncing on it trying to get the hitch out from underneath one of my trailers or my log splitter or something, so I just added a solid link on it, and it seems to work all right too. So that is it for the pretty much complete tractors. I'm fortunate enough to have a really tall ceiling and a high-low over there, so I can get stuff off the racking. If you see me at the shows, that's Norman, our hauler from Norman, Oklahoma, and it's an old 01 Duramax diesel, 2-wheel drive, stick shift, and you'll see a big deck on top. I got an 8.5 foot wide deck that's 9 feet long. We haul the tractors on top of that. So otherwise, we'll see you around. Have a great day. Play with your wheel horse.